Good morning, I am David Reuter. I'm from the Inagro Institute in Belgium, and I was asked to talk a little bit about the connection between insects and agriculture in the current setting. Very briefly, Inagro, it is an independent research company in Belgium doing research in agriculture in many different fields. As you can see here, we have a department on farming itself, but also edible mushrooms, greenhouse, organic production, aquaculture, biogas, amongst others also. But of course, most important for today, we have a pilot scale insect farming facility. With pilot scale, I mean that we try to do research in our insect research center on a industrial scale or on a semi-industrial scale, so not a lab scale. We focus on two species, being the mealworm and the black-soldier fly, although we have some experience with all crickets and cockroaches. We have 6 climate rooms, together 125 square meters, and a few million insects, or tens of millions of insects. I don't know just how many there are, never counted them. And our main goal is actually to produce or to investigate how to produce high quality insects with minimal labor and minimal costs, being feed costs or otherwise. For that, we, amongst other things, we have looked at optimizing the hatch rate for the mealworm and the black-soldier fly. We look at optimizing the feed, both in nutritional perspective, physical parameters, FCR, and so on. It could also be density and stuff. And we also look, for example, with the adults to optimize egg production, and for example, with the mealworms, minimize cannibalism of the eggs. But enough about Agro. The real topic of today, insects and agriculture, are they a natural synergy? In the current agricultural setting, very simplistically said, is that we have quite a linear agriculture. We have crops growing on the field. They will go to or directly to our home, or they will go to animals, for example, chickens or pigs or cows. And those chickens, pigs, or cows are going to our home. It is a linear system with a lot of waste. And insects are actually most of the time seen as more a pest species than a beneficial species, with a major exception of bees, of course. One possibility would be that we use part of the crops to feed our insects and then to feed our animals. I think nobody here will disagree that this is not the way forward, because then we are just going into competition with the other animals. And the way forward, at least certainly in my opinion, would be that we use everything else that is growing on the field that we cannot use currently to sell directly to the homes or to the animals. This could be plant residues and the leftover residues after harvesting. But also important, I think, we could use infested or diseased crops. Potentially, this is, I think, a major part of a major area of research. For example, with fungi infested corns, there are already some papers suggesting that we could use those corns to feed to mealworms, and that the mealworms can metabolize the toxins that are present in those corn and make it again safe to use. There are also lots of other areas. I mean, there is a lot of crops that are now thrown away. A lot of, for example, tomatoes. A lot of tomatoes are thrown away because they're bruised, because they have some spots, and people don't like spots on their tomatoes. And currently, they're all thrown away. All those things can be reused for insects, or at least potentially reused. So I believe this is the way forward. A second major influx of feed could be catering waste, could be manure, could be anything else organic actually coming from the households or restaurants or shops. But a lot of research is needed. It's also stated here, it's currently not legal in Europe to do that. And that's why I think it's very important to do research in that area to know if it's legal, because we don't know. It's illegal now in part because we do not know. We do not know the implications of using it and the implications on the food safety standards. One possible future outcome could be that we use the manure and the catering waste to feed the insects, but the insects itself are not used as feed or food. And they are used, for example, for all kinds of technical applications. Technical applications being biodiesel, bioplastics, pharmaceuticals, cosmeticals. I mean, I think in that area, we only scratch the surface in what is possible and what we can extract from the insects. I think the insects are also one of the few animals that can actually be bred for the sole purpose of technical applications. But I believe this is a field that is still wide open, lots and lots and lots of stuff that can be done in that field. Maybe in the far future, we can even have industrial waste streams going to insects. For example, styrofoam. There are very promising reports that, for example, styrofoam can be fed to mealworms, that it can be metabolized, and that we can actually grow them on it. On a styrofoam is quite a difficult plastic to otherwise get rid of or to reuse. And there are certainly other kinds of industrial streams that maybe could also go to the insects. So as you can see, we actually have if we introduce insects in agriculture, we go from a fairly linear agricultural system to a much more circular agricultural system, reducing the amount of waste, reducing the amount of, for example, leachate into the soil with too much phosphate and nitrogen, and we produce, again, high quality products. I could add many, many more connections in this slide. For example, we could use the frass for insects to go to the biogas facilities, as we will probably hear later on. We could use dead animals to feed the insects. We could do a lot of things. But we always have to take into account that we have to do a lot of research in order to ensure that this is safe to do. Food safety and feed safety and the safety of the people in general are critical. And that's sometimes people ask me, why can't we give manure to the insects? It's just because we do not have enough evidence yet to support that there is no risk involved to it. As you can see, as I believe that actually, we now know just the very tip of the iceberg on insects. We have done maybe 60 years, maybe 80 years, I don't know how long exactly, of research on how to kill insects, on pesticides, insecticides. We just begun doing research on how to keep them alive and rear them. There is literally decades of research ahead of us. We do most of the research on only a few species, but there are millions of species of insects with at least 2,000 species that we can eat. This could mean that actually for every waste stream, you will probably find an insect that likes to eat it. We could go even further in dissecting the insects and to, for example, go to antimicrobial proteins. There is a lot of promising work in that area. There is actually at the moment very little work done, to my knowledge, on, for example, strain selection. Even within one species, insects can be genetically very diverse. And we have not, there is some strain selection happening in private companies and some institutions, but at the moment you can't really go to the shop and say, I want to buy a black soldier fly that is specialized in eating potatoes or eating tomatoes or eating meat. I'm sure we could get to that point. We can think about other applications for coatings. We can look at, here we talk about food and feed insects, of course, but we have a lot of other beneficial insects that need to be bred or that we can use to bred to reduce the amount of insecticides. We can think about medical applications, not only from the chitin and chitosan, but also, for example, the maggots of flies are used to disinfect wounds, and so on. So we're really at the beginning of a field, the start of a field, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. That's why I would say, let's try to work together. I mean, we're in a field with so much work, we do not need to compete with each other. There is more than enough work to do, that we can do, that needs to be done, that we do not need to compete with each other. So this is actually my main thought today, is that try to work together, and that's why the conference is so good, that people come together, share ideas, maybe have new projects coming up. That's why the last thing I want to say is that for the Italian students maybe that are present, internships are possible at Inagro. We have one person normally present today, Somaya, that already did a partial internship at Inagro, unfortunately cut short by the coronavirus, but it is possible. You can't really see it probably on this, you can't see it on the slide. Just contact me via email. So this was my very brief introduction on the sessions today.